Corinthians, the 12th chapter, and we're talking about the gifts of the Spirit and how those gifts were divvied out in the order that they were divvied out, and then we talked a little bit about what the specific gifts were. And then as we were ending last week, we were talking about one body and one Spirit, and even though that the gifts were different to different people, they all came from the same place, and they all had the same source. And what we're going to talk about today is how all these spirits kind of to meld together, and then at the end, Paul's going to tell them that these gifts are going to go away, and there's a better gift to have than those gifts. So we'll kind of move on from there. Before we go any further, I'd like for Kevin Dix, if you would, to lead our minds in prayer.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to come together. Thank you for the many blessings of life, for the night rest, for protection and harm. We ask your blessing on our class today, and we may all learn something that will be beneficial to our lives. Pray you bless each teacher, that they may deliver their lessons in such a way that we all can understand. Bless those who are unable to be here because of sickness, that human hand might be upon us. We go with us down through life, in Christ's name we pray.
So let's go back and look at verse 13 for just a second to kind of bring us into what we're talking about today. Verse 13 says, "For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jew or Gentile, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit." So this kind of brings us into what we're going to talk about today. This was a very diverse group of people that were there at Corinth. You had Jews, you had Gentiles, you had slaves, you had free people, and they were all together there in the body of Christ. And apparently, there was some division. Obviously, there was some division among the different groups. And Paul is trying to impress upon them not only the deal about the Spirit, but also about just their daily walk of life. Is that's kind of immaterial when it comes to the church. And if you think about it, you look at this congregation, we've got a pretty wide variety of people and with vocations and things along that line and life experiences. But when it comes, and we take all those experiences and we use them, to the glory of God and to the edification of the church here. And that was kind of Paul was trying to commit to these people was, use the things that you've got to your advantage and also to the advantage of Christ, because when it comes right down to it, once they were baptized into the body, they were all one, and they should have one common goal. And that's kind of one of the themes that Paul is talking about in this in this particular chapter. All right, Bill.
I was going to say that what Paul is saying, he actually said it even a little bit earlier in chapter 10. He talked about the body having one body. Paul is trying to tell them that the church is the great equalizer among them. It doesn't matter your government status, your economic status, your social status, but that is not what's important in the church. Your soul is what's important, and your faith is what's important, and your adherence to the Word of God, that's what's important.
And he's going to sum that up in the last verse of this chapter. Absolutely. All right, so let's look at verse 14. "For the body is not one member, but many." And it's just like, like the human body, the church is not just one member, but it's composed of different members, just like the body is. There's a whole lot of different parts to the body, and each one of the parts have an important role to play in the overall homeostasis of the body and the body functions. Now, that's not to say that the body can't function without certain without certain organs or certain things. But the problem is when that happens, it doesn't function as efficiently. I know there's lots of people in this congregation that's had surgeries done and had, gallbladders taken out, and some wish they'd had their gallbladders taken out, and kidney problems. There's a lot of those types of things that they can do something with. And if you do something like that, the body doesn't function quite as efficiently as it does. And as you get older, the body parts don't function quite as good as they used to. It's like old Stanley Fink says, growing old ain't for sissies. So, it makes it a little bit more difficult to do. But if the body is all right there and all the members are functioning properly, then you're going to have a very healthy body. If all the members are present and functioning the way that they should in the church, you're going to have a very good church and a very functional church. And the word members here talks about the different parts and also refers to the functions of all of these different parts. And if you think about the congregation, there's a lot of different functions that have to go on for the congregation to operate efficiently. And different members fulfill these different parts, based on their talents. And every part of the church is important because it serves some type of function, even though sometimes we don't think that it does, but it actually does. Comments about that verse? All right, let's look at verses 15 through 18. If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not a part of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in the body as it hath pleased him. So we see here that there are many functions in the body, and the hand has a function. And if the hand could talk and say that I'm not the foot, so I'm not part of the body, or all the eyes or the ears or whatever. Every part of the body has a function. And God, when he put man together and he created man, he gave every one of these members a function that he knew that this function was important and it played a part. And even though we don't understand all the things about the body, we understand a lot of things, but there's still a lot of mysteries. That's why they call it practicing medicine. And, that we don't understand. And the one I think about a lot is the appendix. You talk about the appendix, and that normally brings up a bad thing. People get an appendicitis. Well, what's the function of the appendix? Well, you talk to doctors, and they really don't know exactly. They can guess to what it is, but obviously God put that appendix there for something other than appendicitis. So, every part of the body has a function, and it's just like that in the church. And you can't have strife between the different members based on what they do. You think of the worship service, okay? We have to have somebody who can pray. We have to have somebody who can do the Lord's Supper. We have to have somebody, to lead singing, okay? I get up there and sing songs. I don't consider myself a song leader, okay? I don't sing very well like some of the other people in the congregation. I would love to be a great singer, and I would love to be able to read the notes. That's just not my thing. Okay. There's other people in the congregation. I would love to pray as good as those people. And we've got some people in this congregation who can do just absolutely wonderful prayers, very meaningful prayers, very heartfelt prayer. That's a talent. Just like singing is a talent. We've got a lot of good singers in the congregation. But I'm not gonna get on Bill because Bill's a song leader and I don't lead as good as he does. I said, well, I'm not a song leader because I'm not like Bill, or I don't pray like somebody else. That's kind of strife we don't need. We need to and that's what they were having here. These people were mad at each other because they didn't have the spiritual gift that they want. And the thing that Paul was explaining to them is, every one of these gifts are important. And just because you don't have the one you want, if you have a gift, you need to use it for the edification of God. And it seems to contend that because they did not have a certain one more important gift, that they weren't an essential part of the body. And if you look at these gifts that we enumerated last week, some of them are a little bit more spectacular than others. Some of them are rather kind of mundane, but those mundane things are important. And, we shouldn't look down on anybody in the congregation because, they don't have all the skills. We've got to have people who sit in the pews and listen. That's just as important as somebody getting up and leading and singing. Sitting in the church, singing the song, glorifying God, making music in God's ear, that's just as important as the song leader. Okay, so it's not something to be concerned about. Do what you can do and do it to the best of your ability, and that's what Paul is. That's what he's saying here, and he's trying to correct these people's problem by drawing the comparison with the body. Every part of the body has a function, and every function is essential, just like in the body. And the point is, the humble members should be just as well honored as the members who perform a more public, as we would say, a more public function. The ones who are just sit in the seat should be honored just as much as the ones who get up and perform duties in the church, because everybody has an important function. Sometimes it's important to have somebody who could just sit and listen to. You got a problem, and just somebody sit and listen to your problem. And there are some people that are better listeners than others, and that's a gift in my mind. I'm not a very good listener sometimes. Okay, so that's the type of thing. So the very existence of the body, as depends on the union of all of these different parts of the body, and the church depends on the same thing. All these different talents and functions all melding together to make sure that the church is working in the way that God intended it to do. So
they also serve who stand and wait.
Right. Or those also serve who sit and squirm. Yeah.
This is some of Paul's greatest writing here, and it's a master class in argument in very few words, because without being insulting, he's showing them how absurd their concerns are about who has what gift or who performs what job. He's letting them know everyone in the church is important.
Right.
And he sums it up in again, just a few words there in verse 20. Very simple.
All right, we'll get to verse 20 here and say, let's go to verse 19. And if they were all one member, where were the body? So if the different members did their distinct function, you wouldn't have a body. You'd have a bunch of eyes rolling along on the floor. You'd have a bunch of ears laying there. And there's no brain to process the stuff that they're hearing. So it just wouldn't work. We'd just be a bunch of parts laying on the floor. And that's kind of how it would be in the church if everybody just kind of did their own thing. We'd have absolute chaos, and nothing would get accomplished. There would be no edification and no glory to God, because God doesn't like chaos. If you think about it, everything that God made has an order to it, and everything that God does has a plan to it. There's no chaos, and He has a perfect plan. And can you imagine if you put a committee together to make a human body? Could you imagine what that would look like? That's right. It would never get done. That's right. I mean, it would be. I'd hate to see what it's going to look like. So, in God's infinite wisdom, He put the body together, and in God's infinite wisdom, He put the church together. And if you follow the plan that He put together, we're going to have a very functional church, and a church that does the will of God. Comments about that verse? All right, let's move on to verse 20. But now are they many members, yet one body. Same deal with the body. Everything goes together. He keeps repeating this truth about this oneness. The one body, the one spirit. And that is such an important concept, is this unity and one. There's one God, there's one Savior, there's one church, there's one body, which is the church. It's all one. And that really shoots the concept of all the denominations. Paul shoots that down right here when he keeps talking about one and this oneness that there needs to be. There's one doctrine.
So then he'll actually go to this verse and say, see right there, it says there's many members to the body.
Right.
That's why they think this is talking about denomination. I've heard a lot of them say.
But it's completely out of. You can take that one verse and they've taken it completely out of context with the rest of the, with the rest of the things. All right, let's look at verse 21. And the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. So one member of the body cannot do without another member of the body. And we've talked about that already. The body has to function together, and every part of the body performs an important function, and if that function is not there, then the body is going to suffer. The eye needs the foot, the hand needs the head. I mean, all the different parts of the body are interdependent on each other. Same deal in the church. All of the members are interdependent on each other. The eye is a member of the body, and it depends upon the health and the life of the body for its own growth and vigor and goodness and vigor. If the body dies, if the heart quits beating, the rest of the body is pretty much dead. Okay, when the brain stops functioning the way it's supposed to be, the body might be functioning physically, but you're just kind of a vegetable. You just exist, but you don't. You can't do anything. So the body could not maintain life without all of the different parts, functioning. And obviously, there's more parts of the body that's more important than others. When you talk about pre-hospital care, you talk about the heart, you talk about the lungs, and you talk about the brain, keeping them functioning. Those are very important. Three very important organs. You can't do without lungs, you can't do without a heart, and you can't do without a brain. Now, you can do without some of the other bodies, but there's a hardship that goes along to it. And to a certain extent, the body will kind of compensate for it. It's the same deal in the church. And it kind of boils down in the church to you've got to have leadership. And you've got to have good leadership to make sure that everybody is going in the right direction. And without that leadership, the church is going to go astray. And, I want to emphasize this. It's got to be strong leadership, and it's got to be leadership that's grounded in, what the Bible says and following the instructions that the Bible, sets forth. And leadership that's strong enough to, when things start going awry, to stop it and get everybody back on course. That's kind of the concept here that about the vital organs in the church. The leadership is one of the most vital things. Comments about that verse?
Well, I've always read about the big toe. Missing that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And 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 I have a little bit of experience with big toes because my dad got his big toe cut off one time with the lawnmower, and he had a lot of problems adjusting to that, and he had to wear a special shoe the rest of his life to compensate for a little thing that's about that long. It's buried in the backyard out on Enslow. My grandfather, and some of you knew Jack Drake. He had always heard that if you cut off an appendage, you need to go bury it. And if it bothered you after it was cut off, you dug it up and you moved it someplace else. So for years, we had a little stone in the backyard on Enslow. I don't know if it's still there or not, where Dad's toe was buried. So if he had problems with it, we could go pick it up and move it. So, and if some of you guys, people knew my dad, he always got a big kick out of that. But anyway, that's a very good point. All right, so let's move on then to verse 22. Nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary, and those members of the body which ye think be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncommonly parts have more abundant comeliness. So, we talk about things that are vital organs. And, sometimes just because they are vital organs, sometimes they're a little bit more weak and a little bit more helpless. And you think about the body, okay? The most oxygen-sensitive part of the body is the brain, which is one of the most important parts. But it's one that can be injured severely with just something simple, something that wouldn't bother any other part of the body other than just being sore a little bit could do a lot of damage to the brain. Yeah, so you have to evaluate the situation to what's going on in the body. You have to do the same thing in the church. And sometimes we tend to overlook certain members because they're not flashy. But you know what? They're in the pews every time that the building opens. And they are worthy as just as much honor as the ones who are kind of in the forefront. And we kind of tend sometimes to overlook these people because they're not flashy.
So in our case, here, it's just like any place, like any business, there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Right. Right.
Once that person is gone and you start missing what they were doing, it seems like it takes 2 or 3 people to fill the shoes. It's amazing what goes on, even in this small congregation, what goes on that most of us don't even know about. If you let it not be taken care of, it's crazy. And I say it all the time. I just can't say enough how much I appreciate it right here. And the things that they're involved in, and like you said, it's not flashy. There's no announcement made of it. They just do it, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on.
And you're absolutely right. And I can think of Jim Crum back there at the door every time that the door opens, just making sure that everybody knew that what you're supposed to do. And right, it's just and you as the leader, you get to depend on that. And you just think it's always going to be there. When it goes away, it's a whole lot more difficult. And, people that do things like that, they are worthy of honor in the job that they do, because there's no job that's unimportant. All work is honorable. And, we need to stop sometimes and think about that, especially when we get on our high horses and think that, the whole world would come to an end if I quit doing what I'm doing. Well, it's not that way. one of these days we're all going to be gone, and there's going to have to be somebody coming to take our place. But we need to honor the ones who who are doing those jobs, and don't look at somebody who you think is weak or feeble or something like that and think, well, they're expendable, because nobody is expendable when it comes to to things like this. You can live without a hand, you can live without a foot, certain things, but you can't live without your internal organs. Same deal with the church. There's certain things that may go off to the side because somebody's not doing it, but there's certain vital things that have to go on, and it's just essential. Comments about that verse? All right, let's move on to verse 24. For our commonly parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacketh. So, God is judging us by how we treat the least. And I think that's an important concept sometimes that we need to, to think about, is how we treat the least of our number, and the least of our society, and things along that line. Because, we could probably do without those parts, but God put them there for a reason, and it was His good will that those things exist, and we need to give honor to anything that God puts together and gives us. So God has put the members of the body in such relation to each other that the stronger and the more beautiful are compelled for their own good, and indeed for their existence, to defend and care for, and thus hence honor the weaker members. I thought that was a very good, there was a very good statement. It's a responsibility of the strong to take care of the weak, and I think that's a very important concept. Other comments about that verse? All right, let's move on to verse 25. That there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. So there should be no necessary or independent part of the whole human machine, that every part should contribute something to the general proportion and symmetry and beauty of the body. The same deal with the church. God has completely tempered the whole thing together, so that not even the smallest visible part can be removed from the body without injuring in some proportion the church. When we run somebody off because we're not good to them, or when somebody dies off, there's a void there. Some voids are more critical than others, but there's a void there that has to be filled. Just like Kevin said. So the members have the same responsibility to care one for another, and I think that's, if we do that, we're going to go stronger, and we're going to have, in the military they call it esprit de corps, and that's a very important thing. And that's the oneness that a group has. And it's not just the leader's responsibility to do that; it's everybody's responsibility to take care of each other. And if we see a problem, we shouldn't have to be told to do something about it. We need to go on and do it. If there's somebody's hungry, we shouldn't have to be told to go get them something to eat. If somebody needs something done around their house and we know about it, we shouldn't have to be told to do that. We should go on and do it. And I think that's an important thing. And if we are doing those things, there's not going to be any division or any arguments among the people, because when you do something like that for somebody, you're not talking about caring about them. You're showing them that you care. And you form a bond with those people when you do something like that. And they're not going to forget. It may be something simple to you, but it may be huge to that person. And it creates a loving bond. And I think that's really so important in this. Comments about that?
I have a comment. I think we need to be very careful
Mhm.
When you say, to be very careful, and I know sometimes on social media, where some of us are more go on social media and make comments. And I think as our family here in the church worldwide, to be very careful about our comments to our brothers and sisters on social media. If I say something on social media that I believe in, and a member, sister or mother does not, they should not respond. I feel they should call me or come by my house and sit down, let's talk about that. And I think we are dividing ourselves on social media with what we believe in, and we're responding in negative ways. And I feel like we need to just really stop and think about what we're saying instead of calling each other, that we're supposed to love each other, and not, and what we're showing to people as we're brothers and we're talking, we're showing love and, but when you say and do things on comments, other people who are not members of the church are seeing this. Now, it's been very, I've struggled with this for several years. And we need to be very careful because there's things that I think that I believe in and I say, people, but call me and we'll sit down or come to my house and we'll talk about it. But we have to be very careful because there's people watching us.
The social media deal, you're absolutely right. And it follows you forever. You think about some of all this stuff on the news, these politicians and all these people and stuff. They go back to when they were in high school and they pull up something they said on social media. It never goes away. And of course, I don't do that stuff. I don't do Facebook. I don't do chat or whatever it is. That stuff just gets you in trouble. Okay. And I know when I was fire chief, I had to put out a policy about that at the fire department. And I had to run some members off because of stuff they put on Facebook. And I mean, that kind of, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, you got to watch what you say on stuff like that. Absolutely.
And if you can't say anything, you need to just
shut up.
Be quiet.
Yeah, don't say anything.
We have many people, we're special. We are very special. And we got to be careful because we're not showing.
That is a wonderful point, Bill.
That goes exactly with what Paul talked about in the last chapters before, where he talked about what image are you showing to the larger Corinthian community when you have this turmoil in the congregation. You have different practices in the worship. You have a problem. What are we showing?
That's right. And people are watching. All right, let's move.
This shouldn't need to be done out of love instead of just duty.
Absolutely. And if it's done out of love, it's more meaningful than out of duty. And people think a whole lot more. That's a good point also.
Some people think that it's their duty, like Jesus says, to say something. We should take it out of love part.
That's a good point. Let's go to verse. Yes, sir.
That comment about social media, that brings us back to something very crucial. And it's something the Lord's church as a whole misses the mark on so much that we need to pay more attention to. And that's being a complete unified fellowship with each other. Everyone, when you think of fellowship, and I've said this in many sermons, everybody, when I mean it, you say something about fellowship, everybody automatically goes to a meal and fellowship. On the fifth Sunday of the month, or whatever it is. That's not what the fellowship I'm talking about. Biblical fellowship is us knowing each other, so what you speak of doesn't happen. That if we have something we know one another about, we're comfortable with it, we come to each other for pride. Instead of airing our dirty laundry in front of people. If members of the church come back and meet in fellowship, you're talking about human body. That, you look at human body, how it relates to itself. Every part communicates to the brain and communicates back down. If I stub my toe, I know I have pain. I jerk back, and my left foot knows to overcompensate out and take it pull away my body and keep me from falling down. The same thing happens in the Lord's church. People, figuratively speaking, stub his toe, instead of compensating and keeping it internal, we yell out, and the whole world knows now we have a problem. We need to remind ourselves about
a good point.
We have need back to fellowship with each other, but each other's weaknesses, each other's strengths. Everyone sets each other off with weaknesses.
Good point. All right, let's look at verse 27. Now ye are the body of Christ and members in particular. So every one of these parts constitute the body. So let's look at verse 28. And God hath set forth some the church, first apostles, secondly prophets, thirdly teachers, and after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, governments, diversities of tongue. So basically what God is showing here is, or what Paul is showing here is basically the chain of command, how this all came down. It started with the apostles and it moved all the way down to the members, and all these different gifts were given for a particular purpose to a particular person for a particular purpose. And the apostles, of course, they were the highest, and they were endowed with the fullness of the Spirit and of the knowledge. And then they passed it down as it needed to be passed down to forward the work of the church, not for self-preservation or not for self-edification, but to prove the things and to be a witness of the things that that God was saying to prove the gospel. And these were things that were necessary for the church to survive until the whole plan of God was completely revealed, and then these things were going to go away. So we see an order here of how they came down. We've talked about the miracles and the healing and all of that before, but we see a pecking order here that was started by Paul. So let's look here at verses 29 and 30. Are all apostles, are all prophets, are all teachers, are all workers of miracles, have all gifts of healing, do all speak with tongues, do all interpret? The answer to that obviously is no, because every one of these things is a particular gift for a particular thing. It was given to these people for a reason. And verse 31 sums this whole thing up. And this is where I wanted to finish this chapter so Bill could start fresh next Lord's Day. Let's look at verse 31. But covet earnestly the best gifts, and yet show I unto you a more excellent way. These gifts are going to go away. Okay, there's a better gift. And that better gift, Paul is revealing to them, and that's to have a good heart. And have a pure heart. That's the best gift that you can get, having a good heart and a good conscience and being faithful. If we have those things, these other gifts are irrelevant. And these gifts are going to go away. And they were coveting things that were going to go away, and they were missing the boat of what was really important because they were so tied up with all these gifts that they had. Paul wanted them to look at the more excellent way. And the more excellent way is following Christ and doing the things that He wants us to do. And that's the best gift of all, is to have a pure heart and good faith. Bill?
And although he didn't set up the division in chapters, verse 31 tees up the love chapter, because he is saying none of these things matter a human being without love.
Right. So Bill will take over next week with the next chapter. So I appreciate everybody's attention and comments today.